Okay, this is the assignment that you need to do to retake the volume test. Before you can retake the volume test, you must complete all the assignments in PowerSchool in the volume unit and pass the Educating video. You can find the links to any assignment in the volume unit on the online classroom. Right, so the first question wants you to name the solid and determine the volume. So if I look at this shape, I know this shape is a cylinder. So I can say this is a cylinder. And if I want to determine the volume, I'm going to use the volume formula. Volume equals the area of the base times the height. So in order to find the volume, I need to know the area of the base, which is a circle. And I know the formula is pi r squared for the area of a circle. So I would say the area of the base is pi times 10, because half of 20 is 10 squared. So that would tell me my area of my base is 100 pi. Now, I can go back to my volume formula and I can substitute in 100 pi for the area of the base. And I look at the picture and I see that my height is 10. So if I multiply that together with my calculator, that tells me that the volume of this cylinder is 1,000 pi. You do this one. Now, next question. I want you to determine or name the figure. In this case, it is a cone. So if I want to find the volume of my cone, I've got to use my formula. Volume equals 1/3 times the area of the base times the height. I can look at this shape and I can see that the base is a circle. So to find the area of a circle, I'm going to use the formula A equals pi r squared. So in this case, this is going to be pi times 15 squared, which is 225 pi. So I can go back to my volume formula and I can substitute in. I know to find my volume, it's 1/3 times the area of the base, and the area of the base is 225 pi times the height. Now if I look at my shape, I can tell that this 25 is on the slant side, so that's not the height. The height is always vertical. So here's my right triangle. To solve it, I need to use the Pythagorean theorem. So that's going to give me a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And your slant side is always your hypotenuse. So that's going to give me 25 squared as my hypotenuse. So a squared plus 15 squared equals 25 squared. And to solve this, I'm going to need to get rid of my exponents. So 15 squared is 225. And 25 squared is 625. So to solve it, I need to use the subtraction property of equality. That eliminates it on the left. So a squared equals 400. And to find the height, I've got to get rid of my square, so I'm going to take the opposite, square root. So I know my height, or a, is 20. So I can substitute that into my volume formula for h. So I know my height is 20. Then all I've got to do to find my volume is put it in the calculator. So I'd say 1/3 times 225 pi times 20. And that's going to give me the volume of this cone is 1,500 pi. So I found the volume of the cone. Now, you find the volume of this shape. Next example. Determine the solid, name the solid and determine the volume. This is a hemisphere because it is half of a sphere. So the formula for a hemisphere is 4/3 pi r to the third power. That's the volume formula for a sphere. And so a hemisphere is half of that, so I need to divide by 2. So to determine the volume, I'm going to substitute in the value of the radius, which in this case is 11 to the third power, divided by 2. And then to find my volume, all I've got to do is put that in the calculator. So I'd say 4/3 times pi times 11 to the third power, and all that divided by 2. And that gives me 2,662 over 3 pi is the volume of this hemisphere. You do the same thing on this one. Next example. Name the solid and determine the volume. In this is an example of a pyramid. So the formula that we're going to use for a pyramid is volume equals 1/3 times the area of the base times the height. So the first thing I need to substitute in is the area of the base. This base is a rectangle. And to find the area of a rectangle is area equals base times height. So if I look at only the rectangle, these are my values on the rectangle. So I know that my area equals 7 times 4, which is 28. So I can go back to my volume formula and substitute in what I know for the area of the base, and that would be 28. If I look at the picture, I see my vertical line, my height is 8. So to find out what the volume is, I'm going to put that in my calculator, 1/3 times 28 times 8, and that tells me my answer is 224/3. That is the volume for my pyramid. You work this one. Next example. Find the volume of a cone whose diameter is 10 inches and height is 6 inches. So I know I want to find the volume of the cone. The volume formula for a cone is volume equals 1/3 times the area of the base times the height. So the first thing I need to substitute in is the area of the base. A cone has a circle for a base, which is area equals pi r squared. So to find the area of this circular base, area equals pi times, if the diameter is 10, then the radius is half of 10, which would be 5. So I know the area of my base is 25 pi. So I can substitute that in to my formula. So I'd say V equals 1/3 times the area of the base is 25 pi times the height, which the problem tells me is 6. So if I put that into my calculator and multiply 1/3 times 25 pi times 6, that tells me that the volume is 50 pi. So the volume of this cone is 50 pi. You work this one. Six. Determine the volume of a sphere whose diameter is 6. So the shape is a sphere. So the formula for a sphere is volume equals 4/3 pi times radius cubed. So to work it out, I'd say 4/3 times pi, and the radius, if the diameter is 6, the radius is half of that to the third power. So I'll put that in my calculator, 4/3 times pi times 3 to the third power, and that's going to give me my volume of my sphere is 36 pi. You work this one. All right, here's a word problem. This is an example of something you might see on the EOC. What is the volume of a cylinder with a radius of 3 and a height of 9/2? So I know I'm going to use the formula. Volume equals the area of the base times the height. And a cylinder has a circular base. So to substitute in the formula, I need to know the area of a circle, which is area equals pi times r squared. So the area of the circular base is going to A equals pi times, it tells me my radius is 3 squared. So my area is going to be 9 pi. So to determine the volume, I'm going to substitute in. I know my volume is 9 pi. And I know my height is 9/2 inches. So if I work that out, I say 9 pi times 9/2. And it's going to give me my answer is 81/2 pi, which I see my answer is here. You work this one. All right, here's an example of an applied problem. The food manufacturer sells yogurts in cone-shaped cups with the dimensions shown. To the nearest tenth, how many fluid ounces does the cup of yogurt hold? Notice that you have a hint. That is your clue that you're going to have to convert. So the first thing we need to do is we need to find the volume of the cone. So I know my formula is V equals 1/3 area of the base times the height. So I've got to find the area of my circular base, so my radius. So I've got a circle. The area of the base is pi r squared. So that would be pi times half of 8, which is 4 squared. So the area of my base is 16 pi. So I can substitute that into my equation or my formula. 1/3 times the area of the base, which is 16 pi. And the height, if you look at your picture, the height is your vertical height. So that would be this line, which the arrow indicates is 10. So I can substitute that into my formula. So if I work that out, I'm going to say 1/3 times 16 pi times 10 equals 160 over 3 pi. Now all my dimensions are in centimeters, so I know that's centimeters cubed. My question wants how many fluid ounces. So I've got to use a proportion to set up to get my measurements. So I know my volume is 160 over 3 pi. That's centimeters cubed. I want to know how many ounces that is. Then I'm going to use my hint here to set it up. So I know I have 1 centimeter. Centimeters are on top. Over 0.034 ounces. So to solve that, I'm going to cross multiply. So that tells me x equals 160 over 3 pi times 0.034. And that's going to give me, if I hit the SD button, 5.7. So that would be my answer is B. You work this one. Make sure that you write your answers in gallons. Set up a proportion. Next question. Jason constructed 2 cylinders using solid metal washers. The cylinders have the same height, but one of the cylinders is slanted as shown. Which statement is true about Jason's cylinders? Well, we know if they have the same height and the same base, they have the same volume, so A would be out. The cylinders have, again, B would be out because it says they have different volumes. They have the same volume because each washer has the same height. We already know they have the same height. The cylinders have the same volume because they have the same cross-sectional areas. And that's what you're looking for. So the answer for this one is D. You work this one. What is the error? 11. A circular quiche, and that's an egg pie, with a diameter of 9 inches is cut into 6 equal slices. What is the approximate area of the top of one slice? To me, if as a picture, I know that it's cut into 6 equal slices. So I know I have 360 degrees divided by 6. It's going to give me 60 degrees for each angle. So I'm going to say 60 over 360 equals, I want to know the approximate area, so x over, and I've got to find the area of the circle. So I'm going to say pi times, if the diameter is 9 inches, the radius has got to be half of that, 4.5 squared. So I've got to solve any proportion, I'm going to cross multiply. So that gives me 360x equals 60 times pi times 4.5 squared. And that gives me 1,215 pi. So to solve